again, I enjoy running cameras. I mean, I enjoy getting up in the morning, having a coffee, and seeing what was there last night. Matter of fact, my wife beats my butt up about it because she's like, get off that damn phone and pay attention to your son.
Yeah,
like,
same, dude.
Wait a minute, I got to check.
I have
this
a son.
trail camera.
HUNTR Podcast is brought to you by Deer Grow.
Man, we've been using Deer Grow products for a long time. The Plot Start and Plot Boost, more recently Plot Till. Now we've got 3 new liquid fertilizers that have been put in the mix that will cover everything we could want for a food plot program.
It's huge, man. The more food plotting we do, it's like, man, the liquids just make sense. Like whether it's herbicides or the Plot Start and Plot Boost, and now the fertilizers getting mixed in. It's like, man, I can combine all of those in certain cases and do less passes for more results.
I mean, it's all about efficiency. I mean, like you said, less passes. If you're out there treating your beans with glyphosate in the summertime, you can mix in this fertilizer, do that all at once. You have the boost in there that helps the metabolism. It's all about efficiency when we're talking about food plots. And really the big difference on these liquid fertilizers is you're bypassing some of these soil limitations, pH limitations, the soil type. In a lot of cases, we talk about dry fertilizers only being available for 17% of what you put down in the first year. These liquid fertilizers straight into the plant are 90% available in the first year. Huge difference in what you're going to see in growth.
It's huge. And so right now you can use code HUNTR15 for 15% off any of the Deer Grow products on their website. And as always,
better food plots, bigger deer. And we're back.
Hey,
HUNTR Podcast, episode 187. Nick continues. Mustache is coming in.
Yeah. Better than last week?
Yeah.
Always. Yeah.
I would hope so.
Yeah.
In progress.
Yeah, I think, I'll give it a month or two, see what I can manage with it.
Dude, as I'm watching our stuff, sometimes like a commercial will come up with my mustache. I'm like, what is that thing?
Who is this
ridiculous.
guy?
Yeah.
Who is this guy?
The old rut stash.
Yeah. Oh, I can't wait for the old rut stash to come back.
It'll be there.
Oh, yeah. Before we know it, man. June 13th today.
Crazy.
June 13th.
Friday the 13th.
It's Thursday.
That it is.
You want to do your part?
Yeah, mid-June here. Yeah, hey, thank you guys for listening wherever you're coming to us from. YouTube, Spotify, or Apple Podcasts, those are the main platforms we have our stuff on here. Give us a like, follow, or subscribe, whatever's appropriate for the channel. One of those, if you click a bell notification or something, we'll probably let you know when we drop these, but it's every Tuesday night at 6 p.m. Eastern time, regardless. If you've written us on Instagram DM or the website, those are the two that we really check, and we haven't gotten back to you. Apologies. We're working on it. Just kind of a busy time of the year, and we appreciate you reaching out. And here we go.
Here we go. We need rain.
Yep.
Yeah.
How did that all of a sudden?
All of a sudden, just it does it every year. Well, our guest is up in the upper Midwest. I think they've been getting rain. Illinois farm, I think, has been getting rain.
Well, we're all supposed to get some here. Like I said, we all. Illinois is getting some, like 3/4 inch tonight, and then Ohio's supposed to get, I think, a chance, like 60%.
Southern Ohio,
60%.
We dry. Yeah, Southern Ohio and Kentucky is dry. Looks dry I'm banking on a pop-up shower in the next 10 days.
It's got to happen, right?
It's gonna be 97 multiple days. Yeah, it's gonna be cooking.
How is that allowable? That like a forecaster can say, "Well, there's 50% chance." It's like. Yeah.
Yes. There is a 50% chance. Could happen, could not.
I got a 63% of 0.15 is what I have for tomorrow. And then literally,
I would love that.
Literally, no more rain in the forecast in the 10-day forecast until the very end. Maybe
the 18th, 19th. It looks like another system, maybe.
Mine's like 22nd. But in the midst of that, dude, and this is like Ohio, so not normally. 90 degrees, 95 degrees, 98, 98, 97, 95. That's next week's midweek kind of forecast.
It's a rough streak here. So, yeah.
Hopefully your clover's good. Hopefully you haven't mowed clover in the last week.
Yeah, no, I haven't. And, yeah, I need a shower to kind of get my beans going. But
Those grain crops are pretty tolerant, I think. Once they're up and ripping, I'm not too concerned about the clover. Clover will drought out. That's a concern.
Yeah, well, it's why I put a bunch of alfalfa in this year.
I don't know. I wonder how Switch will do.
Slow going, so I think it'll probably be fine.
Pretty tolerant?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, it's that Switch we just put in is probably barely germinated.
I know. Well, that's what I'm concerned about. Is like if it's just barely germinated.
I think it'll just sit stagnant and kind of wait.
Okay.
Yeah, it's I don't know. It seems like every year.
Well, it's got us like in a holding pattern because it's like, I planted those corn and beans like going on 3-4 weeks ago. And generally I'd be gearing up to spray by now. And I'm just kind of like waiting.
Yeah.
It's going to be another 2 weeks or
2
so.
3 weeks.
Kind of like kicking around with cameras and getting stuff moderately fired up, kind of just making a plan to go back out. And I told Nick, it's like right now is kind of the off season, even of the off season. It's just like, everything's in the ground. You know what I mean? We're pretty much patterns. We've put in a lot of work.
Dancing around naked, trying to get rain to happen.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's is that why you're doing it?
Oh,
yeah.
I mean, I do it anyways, but yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Just trying to get,
waiting for rain. Yeah. That is where we're at.
That's why I said to Emily the other day, I was like, planting season's done. She's like, it starts back up in like 4 weeks. I was like, well, yeah, but I mean, like for now, it's done.
A little bit of a break here.
Yeah, this is kind of the reset period before getting ready for fall plots.
Just kind of tinkering down the hunt room, starting to get some stuff cleaned up. Stands all strapped up, and like I said, cameras kind of kicking. Yeah, it's just kind of starting to.
Yeah, we're seeing some good velvet growing. So that's nice.
I want to say that I've held off. For whatever reason, this year's kind of gone faster up until this point. Generally, I'm like, not till July 1st, but it's always June 1st. I have cameras deployed, and I don't.
Well, with how dry it's been, like I've seen the use of the minerals like fall off the face of the earth.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it just, I'm getting spare pictures on like clover plots. That's about it right now.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, I mean, June's kind of that. This last 2 weeks of June, first 2 weeks of July are like really exciting times because I think we talked last time. You're able to, you see a buck and you're like, oh, that's him. You know him. He's developed enough to really distinguish like which deer that is in most cases. And so, yeah, so it's fun to be able to get that and start to think like maybe some of these deer are going to stick around to the early season. New bucks are going to start to kind of filter around. As crops start to come up and stuff. So yeah, it's a cool time to have some cameras out and to be watching and scouting. And
I feel like June is kind of like the Sunday night of the months, because it's like we did all the work. We're good. We got through the week and we're prepping, and now we're just kind of like kicking. And then as soon as July hits, it's like you're behind. It's like
you're back behind.
Yeah.
Yeah. So no, I think we're in pretty good shape on that. And it's cool to see a bunch of the people commenting on the Iowa thing from last week. I think we kind of beat that thing to death of like, it's a gray area, right? I mean, pretty clear black and white on public land, but gray area on the private side of things. But it was neat to see some people talk about the use in some of the states. I can't remember if it was like New Hampshire, Vermont. Somebody commented like, if you get a picture of that deer, like you can't hunt that deer for the next 24 hours or something. And I was like, whoa, like that's insane.
I'm over it. It's a stupid conversation like about like how to use the truck. It's like it's just make it legal or not. Like
I know, but that's what
that would be the thing. Like just make it straightforward.
Yeah,
like there's enough going into it.
So the other thing that yesterday, Hunters Advocate of Ohio website launched. So that's live with Kevin's site, and I think we've got those guys coming on here at some point in the near future, right?
Next Friday.
Yep. So we'll talk a little bit. I'll be interested. We definitely share some of the same viewpoints, but I would assume we share some of the not same viewpoints as well.
Yeah, definitely.
Especially around the non-resident stuff.
Yeah, it's yet to be fleshed out. And frankly, I owe them a phone call. We got to talk about it anyways. We're supposed to yesterday, but yeah, I think their main objective is to just make deer hunting better in Ohio. By allowing the resource more space to flourish while not diminishing, I think, hunter opportunities. So obviously we beat it to a pulp at this point, but I think corn piles are the lowest hanging fruit. And I do think that's their number one objective. I think that whether it's their perception or just, people that have voiced concern also are like, hey, non-residents are an issue also. We have too much pressure from non-residents. And as a non-resident, I obviously want to see that opportunity protected, and other lower hanging fruit addressed first. If it got to a point where that was next, and we still were having some significant issues, then sure, hey, maybe let's address that.
Well, the bottom line is that 70% of the license fees are coming from non-residents. If you want to cut non-residents down, you're going to have to start paying for licenses as a landowner.
Well, not only that, but I also think that like our conversation with Tonk was pretty enlightening in that we can't afford to lose hunters. from a deer management standpoint. We need to retain what we have and incentivize a higher antlerless harvest. So you need the non-residents to do that, in my opinion. What we need is to remove some of the tools that are allowing all hunters to be extremely selective, to just wait and shoot, their 3 and 4 year old bucks off corn piles is how I'm feeling about it. And Kevin, I think, is open to that discussion.
It'll be interesting.
But that's where we stand with it, I guess. So
I'll be here in a couple weeks. So, well, cool. Well, today we've got guests, like I said, Upper Midwest. We've got Pat Reeve, Driven TV on. So,
the Pat Reeve.
So,
Pat Reeve. I actually noticed
Reeve.
that last night. I think I've always mistakenly referred to him as Pat Reeves. But yeah, there's
plural.
It's not a plural. There's just one of them.
The Reeves when we talk about him and Nicole, but just singular. We've got Pat on. He's actually up at his place in Wisconsin, so taking some time. Had a rough travel in. Maybe we'll talk about that a little bit last night, but cool to kind of get to talk with Pat here about his hunting style up there. Obviously, we talked here pre-podcast.
Is Pat a Canadian?
I don't think so. I think he's a Minnesotan.
Don't look at him. He's not going to answer you.
I can't even see him.
Okay,
we'll see.
He strikes me as kind of a Canadian.
Take off, eh?
No offense.
No, he spends a lot of time up there.
Yeah, I know he does.
Yeah.
Maybe that's where I'm getting it from.
Okay, let's see. Let's bring Pat in. All right, we got you, Pat.
You hear me now?
We got you, man.
Yeah, I'm close to being Canadian, but not quite.
Dual residency?
I would love to have dual residency, but I haven't even thought about that. If Biden gets elected, I probably will become a Canadian.
What is your favorite domestic beer? It's a trick question.
I'm totally.
Labatt.
I drink a lot. Well, I drink Coors Light some.
Okay.
But, Mick Golden is my flavor up here, and you guys I don't think you can buy it down there.
I've never had a Mick Golden ever in my life. I've never even heard of that.
Just Mick Ultras. That's all they push down here.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, I know. I kind of started boycotting after the whole Bud Light deal.
Yeah.
Went to Coors for a bit and Coors Light, and
we've been solid on the Coors original here.
Oh, Coors is money.
Yeah.
I would say Coors is my favorite domestic beer.
The Coors Banquet.
Oh yeah,
all of them.
You can't go
Light,
wrong.
original, banquets.
Yeah, very nice.
I just bought some T-shirts the other day.
I know, I saw that.
That's the best money I ever spent. Coors Banquet T-shirts.
I always say my favorite kind of beer is free beer.
Yep, that would be a
and
good
my
one.
second favorite beer is more beer. So
yeah, I think that's a perfect description of it.
It's too bad he's not here. We'll bust into that bourbon table.
Yeah.
Next time.
That's my Kentucky style.
I'd go for that.
Well, Cole, Pat,
I learned to drink Captain Morgan a long time ago from those Canadians, and that's kind of my drink of choice. So
is that a Canadian thing?
Well, that they drink a lot of rum up there. I don't know if they've got it mixed up when they went to Mexico or whatever, but they love rum.
So my uncle, his drink of choice is also Captain Morgan. He likes the private stock, and he does that with a Diet Coke because it's regular Coke's got a little too much sugar. But have you had that?
Yeah,
that's a nice
private stock.
Nice little drink here.
Yeah,
Captain Morgan,
nectar of the gods, man.
That's it. Well, cool, man. Well, so you're in Wisconsin. It sounded like you had a little bit of a bumpy road, per se, to get in there last night, huh?
Yeah. Just it's the way my life's been all spring, it seems like. It was crazy. We have a cabin in northwestern Wisconsin, just below Superior, and it's about a 4-hour drive, 3.5 from my house in southeastern Minnesota. It's a good drive. It's just pretty much all 4-lane all the way up to our cabin. So last night I decided, well, I'm going to bring my skidster and my trailer, which, I run a Cat 289, and that thing is ultra heavy. And I put an extra bucket on the trailer. So I'm on my way up, and I get to Eau Claire, which is about an hour and a half away from my house. And I just was jumping on the 4-lane, accelerating, and all of a sudden the truck it's a 2024 3500 Denali Duramax, and that thing is an awesome truck. It's never gave me any lick of problem. So I jump on the 4-lane and I'm, accelerating, trying to get in with traffic. And all of a sudden I hear a big cunk, and I don't know if it was in the transmission, but as soon as whatever happened, my check engine light came on, and then I got a reduced power warning, and it reduced my power. So I was limited on my speed. I'm like, this isn't good. And I'm like, oh boy, this is not a situation where I can fix myself. So I pulled over into a Quick Trip station and checked my oil, and everything was good, and temperature was good. But I don't know what happened, but the silver lining to the whole story was, my truck something's wrong with my truck for sure. But I was in the same town as my dealership that's sponsored me from day one of Driven, and that's in Eau Claire. Marquardt Motors is the dealership. And so I got on the phone. This is like 10 o'clock at night, and it's storming out on top of it. And I called, my contacts over there, and I said, man, I need you to come and rescue me. I'm going to try to limp this truck to the dealership, which I did, and on low reduced power. And I got it over there, and the guy met me at about 10:30 at night. And we just loaded all the gear that was in my truck, including my 2 dogs, and then hooked the trailer up. And now I got an old Dodge with a Cummins in it thing, and it pulled it like a dream. So I made it up here last night, but it was like at 1 o'clock I rolled in. And then it was funny because my wife goes, I hope you remember your computer for this podcast tomorrow. And I'm like, oh shit. I knew I forgot something, but I'm here.
Yeah, you made it. Hey,
and you were on time, which is more than I can say for a lot of guests.
Yeah.
It was a complete shit show, but we got it.
You got it.
So what's wrong with the truck?
Beats me. I mean, I don't know if it's a tranny thing or something's in the engine. I mean, something happened there, because when I stopped at the Quick Trip and I got back on the 4-lane and did it again. So I don't know. It's a power issue that's either when it's shifting or something, but something's bad wrong with it. But good thing is it's under warranty, and guys over at Marquardt will get it fixed. So
they just loaned you another truck in the meantime. So here, just take this one.
Yeah, the guys
cool.
are good over there. I mean, they're like, well, just go over in the used car lot and find something that'll pull it, and we'll hook you up.
There you go.
So I was over shopping in the used car lot last night at 10:30 trying to find a truck.
Right on.
Those damn trannies, am I right, Nick?
I get you. You got to watch them.
You know what? Trucks have been a big part. They're a big part of what you guys do, right?
Yeah, absolutely, dude.
You ain't gonna get your job done and travel to your hunting locations. You just don't throw your stuff in the back of a Subaru,
No.
So, years ago, this is when the diesel exhaust stuff was mandated, and you had to start running DEF. So I got a 2500 Chevy back then. That it was the first year that they had the DEF tanks in them, and the truck was running fine, and all of a sudden we got this big bout of cold weather, and I had an Iowa late season tag, a muzzleloader tag, and I was pumped because I was hunting on a good piece of ground, had some big deer, daylighting, and the guy I was hunting with was saying, man, you need to get down here. This buck last night daylighted. He's going to do the same thing again. So I jump in my truck and I book it. I'm like, okay, I had it all timed out. If I get down there, it's like 4.5 hour drive down to zone 5. And I'm flying down the highway, and I'm not quite to Ames, Iowa on 35 there. And all of a sudden my truck, it says, low def and, reduce power soon. And I'm like, what the F? This can't be happening. And I know that from an early experience, back then those DEF tanks didn't have good heaters.
Right.
So that DEF fluid would freeze if it got really cold. and then it would go into limp mode or low power, and you were screwed. You had to physically go to a dealership. They had to pull the tank off and then reset the, whatever it is in the tank in order for it to read that it had, and it was plumb full of duff. So long story short, I had to find a dealership. I ended up missing the hunt that night. The deer came out in daylighted. He was like a 182 or 3 class deer, typical. And I had to deal with that damn duff tank. I ended up not going I got down there late that night. And then the next day it warmed up, never seen the deer again. And I would have killed them 100% if I wouldn't have had that stupid damn duff issue. But hey,
that's how it goes, man. I mean, I know my new Kubota is a Tier 4 tractor, so it's got the diesel particulate filter in it, and that's, in fact, that it's a pretty new tractor. When I was planting this past week, was the first time, like, all of a sudden my dashboard starts lighting up. I'm like, what the fuck is this? Like, I've driven old tractors my entire life. Like, I don't know what this is. And then I'm like sitting there in the middle of the field, like YouTubing it, and it was basically like, I didn't really even have to do anything. It was just lights indicating that it was starting a burn off process. But I'll tell you what, it smelled like shit. Like, I thought my tractor was like gonna catch on fire or something. But it's just all these new systems and stuff. And dude, everything's electrical. Like, I popped the hood on that thing. I'm like, what the hell am I supposed to do with this?
Yeah, you can't even find the battery.
I know, man. It's crazy. So
dude, it's amazing that the situations that you find yourself in, like trying to get a deer killed, and like what you're willing to do. You have to ask yourself too, because sometimes family is involved. It's like, how far am I willing to push this? I'm like, what are my options here? It's amazing. Like, you're like, am I about to hitchhike to the rest of the way to Iowa? Am I about to, am I going to pull in stops? Am I going to buy a new truck?
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I guess it's those
things come through your mind.
It's those memories, or it's those experiences, whether a lot of times they're the low points or the things that, went haywire that you always remember. If I would have just rolled down there and killed them, I probably wouldn't have remembered as much of not killing them. So in the situation surrounding, I mean, I'm going to someday do a show on just all the mishaps that really cost me monster deer. I mean, these are, Boone and Crockett class deer. And I have a hell of a lot of them. and it's not that I'm, really sad about it or pissed about it, but that's hunting, man. It happens. There's been a hell of a lot of them that I've got, that went my way, but there's been quite a few that didn't. So, hey, that's just the lumps you take in this business after you've done it so long. It seems like it's going to happen for sure.
I think we talked about it last week a little bit. There's a lot of people that don't realize, like, they kind of look at it from the outside and they think, oh, it must be nice, like, just, having all this free time to go to this. I mean, we talked about it the last 2 trips that I've taken to the Ohio and Kentucky farm. Like, I know that I'm leaving at the ass crack of dawn, and I won't be back till the next day at like 2 a.m. I know at the best I'm getting in at 2 a.m. And I'm going to get up at 5 the next morning with the kids to do whatever I have to do. And it's just those are the things that you do. It doesn't
just happen on a nice week. You're going to plan this weekend. I'm going to go out. I'm just going to go, get ahead. I'm going to get out to the property. No, it's like, it's always like in the midst of turmoil. Yeah. That buck I shot 2 years ago, I shot like a, decent 4-year-old buck in Ohio. So that's my standards have kind of like progressed. That's what I was looking for. Yeah. I about totaled my truck on the way up there.
Yeah.
Remember I hit a deer the night of, and it was like, I don't know, November.
It's like
early November, whatever it was. And it was same deal. Like, I was planning to hunt that following morning. I was like, it's gonna be my best odds there. And I hit that deer. Every airbag, it's in my 4Runner I'm driving now. Every airbag went off. You know what I mean? Front was crushed. I'm like, oh, it's for sure totaled.
Yeah.
And they're like, we'll see if we could save it. Yeah. And so, dude, my insurance has sunk over $50,000 into that truck over the years. That's the second time I thought I totaled it. And anyway, so what's the
you got a rental, right?
Service or whatever that comes and tow your thing there. And I get a rental the next morning, and I'm like, I can pull myself out of this. But I know, that when things are going wrong, like something bound is good is bound to happen there. So I got some Chipotle in me, you know what I mean? and I was like, okay, we're gonna make this happen. I'm getting there this afternoon. And sure enough, like 75 degrees. I didn't even wear my hunting clothes into the stand because I was like, it's too hot. I'm already sweating. Like I'm not even gonna change. And friggin' shot that buck at like 4:30 in the afternoon, followed it right onto a clover plot.
That's how it goes, man.
Wham.
That's awesome. You know, hey, that's what I appreciate about you guys. That's what I appreciate about all the diehard deer hunters out there is that the effort that you put into, taking care of your properties, whether it's your leases or stuff you own, or maybe it's just, property you have to hunt on. Everybody, that's passionate about what they do and puts that kind of effort, like you said, you get up, you take care of your kids, you get them off to school, or you got all these other things that are in front of your hunt. You're just trying to juggle it to get yourself in a position to harvest a big deer. I mean, that, in my opinion, that's what I respect the hell out of everybody, because, we're all cut out of that same cloth, man. And it's what it's about, because once you got that deer in your hands, you then, all those thoughts and all those, trials and tribulations kind of come back to you right at that moment. You're like, and you just kind of like, you're kind of like a balloon that the air went out of. You're just like, oh my God, I finally did this. And, that's a cool part. That's why we all hunt, in my opinion, is just to have that feeling. And, I mean, I love it. Everybody asks me all the time, they're like, is this ever become a job to you? Or is this, is this work? And I'm like, no, if I had to go hunt ducks, or if I had to fish for a living,
that's work.
Absolutely. It would be, I would dread it. But chasing big deer and big critters with antlers, it's never work. It's always been a, fun adventure. And even if it's pouring rain and I'm getting soaked and I'm miserable, there's still that element of fun for me. And I get excited when I see a good deer. It could be a management buck that I'm after, for the last couple of years, and it might not be a big scoring deer. It might just be a rat head, really. And, I just set my sights on it, focused on killing that deer. And until I get him on the ground, that's, it's kind of my quest. So, and I think everybody can relate,
I've just got Alex Jones in my head. I love the pain.
Yeah.
Because the pain is the truth.
Yeah, that's exactly it. I think I kind of look at myself in like a 2-phase throughout the year. Like right now, as we're doing like all this management, we're getting seed in the ground and stuff, velvet's grown. Like I'm like satisfied just watching deer show up on camera and watching velvet grow. And I'm like, man, this is like, how awesome is this? Like, this is just amazing. And then the moment the season comes in, it's like the switch flips. And now it's like, okay, I set my sights on, I'm trying to kill a deer, like this specific deer, this specific, whatever it is. And so it's really unique in those 2 phases that I think a lot of people who don't have like serious leases or don't own property have a tough time relating to, because that off-season drive and passion is almost as intense as the hunting passion during the 3 to 4 month season.
I was trying to explain that to somebody the other day, and oddly enough, like the comparison of like gardening kind of came up. We're talking about like, what is it like to care so much about deer and a resource like this and invest so much of our time and resources into them, but then to want to kill one.
Yeah.
And I'm like, I don't know. I was like, it is weird. You're right. I was like, it's almost kind of like gardening, where it's like, you care a lot, you invest a lot into like growing a crop, and like in setting everything up and making sure it grows right and watering and all this stuff. But eventually you want to harvest it.
Yep.
You want to
consume it.
The fruits of your labor and stuff. And that's a different process altogether. Like the harvest, whether it be a garden, a crop, or a deer, it is a different thing.
Yeah.
But it's all connected. And I think it all ultimately yields the highest satisfaction from it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. We talk about this all the time. We have this conversation amongst several of us in the industry. A lot of the guys, just like yourselves, we're talking, before the podcast started here about, owning properties and properties in different states and stuff. The amount of effort that it takes to, acquire those properties and get yourself set up is what, a lot of people have that end goal. And just like myself, and sometimes we get bashed on our forums and our, different sites that, hey, you guys live a spoiled, unrealistic life, this isn't thing. And I'm like, you just brought up a good point. It's more than just the harvest. It's going out there, working on your property, trying to make it better, planting food, manicuring that, spraying your crops, all this stuff that goes into the prior to the hunt happening. It's all part of the game that you enjoy doing. And I think that every one of those people that bash the guys that do, see success because they have that opportunity, if they, secretly they all have a passion to eventually be there as well.
Sure.
But they might be forced on public land or not being able to have that luxury. But, hard work and dedication's got me where nobody else handed me anything, I mean, I grinded it out, still am grinding it out to just buy properties to add on to my property. And, there's a lot of sacrifice there. And, people think, oh, you're just born with it or somebody handed it to you. Hell no, I mean, there's a lot that goes into this business. And I mean, a lot of people do pay a lot of respect to, people. I don't want to label everybody, but it's just, I always tell people, I use Mark Drury or Lee Lakoski or those guys, they kill a lot of big deer. But, I remember Mark Drury and of course Lee, way back in the day when they were shooting 120 inchers, 130 inchers, and everybody was amazed because they were harvesting a buck on camera. And now, obviously that bar's, so far out of whack and they're killing giants like religiously, but it took a long time to get to that point for those guys, and they had a lot of work and worked their butts off to build that kind of, those kind of farms to raise those kind of deer. So it just didn't happen, and they've worked their whole life just trying to figure out how to be better stewards, better hunters. And same goes with everybody, right? I mean, it's just a progression. And, I totally respect people that put that kind of effort into, getting to that point and having those kind of farms and killing those kind of deer, because a lot of times there's a lot of work that goes into it.
Yeah, we're in kind of like a weird stage in hunting right now where you've got a group of people, an ever increasing group of people who are hardcore. They're either leasing, they own land, they're looking at management, they're trying to grow an older age class of bucks. They're still trying to incorporate their kids into it, which is even harder than it was, 20 years ago because of all the distractions that we have. And then on the other side, you've got what I call like the displaced crowd, which has been the guys who essentially have hunted, maybe not, maybe some as passionate, maybe some not as passionate, but they've had more access to just open private land, right? Which in today's society is a rarity, right? There isn't a lot of open private land anymore. You're not door knocking anymore.
Which frankly is a vast majority of, in terms of numbers. Most people are just recreational hunters. It's like hunting season comes around and it's like, hey, it's time. Let's go out for a few weekends or whatever. I would say that's most hunters.
And that's where this public land thing comes in, and public land being saturated because people are losing. But it's a weird space because I would say that the deer herd overall and deer management overall is at an all-time high. We're producing on a landscape level healthier deer herds, better age structures, bigger bucks, in a lot of places that aren't getting, let's say, high graded because of pressure. And then I would assume that these public areas, just hearing more and more from people, they're becoming, I wouldn't say like a barren wasteland for deer, but they're just overpressured, right? There's just too many people on them.
We have too many tools. That's where it ties into, earlier, Pat, we were kind of talking about the cell camera thing in Iowa. And it's like, nobody likes to hear restrictions or taking away technology or whatever. But it's like the fact that they removed cell cameras from Iowa public land is going to make it, way better. It's going to make it way better in terms of the resource that's running on that land. And ultimately, it's going to yield more opportunity for everybody who can draw a tag to hunt there.
Mm-hmm.
That's why we generally advocate for things that make it harder. Because what we're seeing with the loss of access, Pat, is like, it's not like there's less. There is a little bit. There's infringement happening from development and stuff.
Sure.
But I don't think that's, and even in farm ground in Iowa and stuff, and in Illinois, and they're removing farming practices are taken out, like some habitat that is happening. But ultimately, I think what's happening is a lot of the good hunting properties are getting privatized. They're getting bought by guys like you and me, and whoever's pursuing stuff like that. And you're allowed to hoard and survey, even if we're not hunting. I could just survey them with cell cameras and stuff. And so you have all these properties that they're growing bigger bucks now and stuff, and guys are just running cameras, not really shooting a lot of deer off of them, but they're just keeping everybody off.
Yeah.
Well, right. It's technology is caught up with us. Look I'm talking to you on a phone right now, and we're having a great conversation. You weren't doing that several years back, but I remember the day when, honestly, it was back when I was guiding in Buffalo County, and a little device came out, and we would string a thread across the trail, and we'd tie it off, and then when something would come down that trail and it hit that thread and bust that thread, it would trip the clock, and we thought we had hit the big time. And we were gonna cheat the system and figure out how to kill a bigger buck quicker and faster than anybody else because we had that device, and we could have this argument. We're having the argument right now, in general about cell cameras and trail cameras. But, we had this argument years ago about compound bows versus traditional bows. And then it was about lighted nocks. And, it's one thing after another. It's like, down the road, cell cameras will be an old thing, and there'll be something else new with technology that gives us even more of an added advantage. And so that's just, whether you like it or not, if you don't like cell cameras, don't use the damn things. But they do give you a hell of an advantage. In my opinion, I think that's one of the biggest things. Cameras, even in general, really, helping you pattern a deer. And being able to kind of, versus the old days when you had to be out there in the field to try to pattern them. It's really changed the game. It's made it, easier in some respects for people to shoot big deer. I think back to just, in the early 2000s when I produced North American Whitetail TV, there was, even in the late 90s, when somebody killed a big deer, it always made the cover of North American Whitetail. And it was known across, there really wasn't a digital platform or social media to spread it around, but it spread around, circulated. Oh, a big deer got shot in Ohio, or Milo Hansen killed this deer. All of a sudden, the deer hunting community found out. And a lot of times they had to wait to hear the story or see the story in print or on a video or TV. But now, it seems like a big deer is not, unless it's a complete mega freak, it don't even hardly circulate, like the old days. So times have really changed. There's a hell of a lot. Look at where Pennsylvania's went. They're killing a hell of a lot bigger deer on east of the Mississippi than they've ever killed before. And, you don't have to go to Iowa now to kill a big deer. You know, lots of different places have big deer, and a lot more management, obviously, that's helped grow those deer.
The HUNTR Podcast is brought to you by Hoyt.
What can we say, man? Another year back with Hoyt. We're both shooting RX8s. I'm shooting 70 pounds in the bourbon, which I love bourbon.
That's great.
And you're shooting 80 pounds in the straight black.
Blacked out as always, man. I got the, so I'm shooting the 500 grain Easton Arrow this year. And at 80 pounds, I'm flinging that thing at like 300 feet per second. I mean, it's deadly. Put a water buffalo in front of me and he's done.
I mean, we shot it earlier. You literally put an arrow through a brand new target, like never been shot before.
I know. So one other thing that Hoyt is doing this year is they're making all their own strings in-house. And so the quality is top notch, and it just really is something that is setting them apart from their competitors.
Well, what we always try to do when we go to our bow shop, Ultimate Outdoors, is we try to shoot other bows just to make sure that we are really giving everybody a fair chance.
Sure.
The reality is it's a no-brainer. Hoyt, it stands above all of them every single time.
Definitely. And so right now you can use code HUNTR, HUNTR, for 20% off any apparel on the Hoyt website. And as always,
get serious, get Hoyt.
I don't think there's been a bigger technological advancement that's been more influential than cameras, just in general. I mean, cell cameras, obviously, there's an argument to be made.
Well, hell, you got a bow that shoots 100 yards efficiently now. You can do that.
And that's definitely true. That's definitely true. But and it's a double-edged sword, I think. I think that for sure, like what weapons have evolved and stuff, and we can have that whole discussion. But in terms of like pre-cell cameras, there was just literally that you didn't know unless you literally saw the thing, or in some states you could, you could spotlight, or by some means you had you picked up a shed from the thing. Like, how else would you know that it exists? Until, the advent of trail cameras, and certainly they started off pretty rough too. You're talking about like with the trip.
And then it was developing film.
But even that developing film, it's like, hey, I can get a picture of this thing I now know what made that rub. I know what has laid the track there that I found it. I think that was one of the most monumental shifts of like, this is what an industry was essentially built around that. You're like, here's what it is.
Yeah, I think the cell camera thing, because if I go back to when I was using all traditional, even digital trail cameras, right? Just not cell cameras. I mean, and we've talked about it. I spent more time in the woods scouting and checking cameras than I did sitting in a damn tree stand, right? I was just moving, trying to pattern, trying to figure out, trying to get as much information as I possibly could. The moment cell cams come out, I can get it all here. Like, it's all here. I'm still doing the same process in my head, but instead of having to spend hours and hours out in the field going and get it, like I have it. But what's so weird about it is, as much as an advantage as that's happened, right? I'd say we're killing bigger deer than we've ever killed, right? I mean, and I don't think that the deer herd's necessarily suffering in most places. It's not like it was so advantageous that it's now started to hurt deer herds overall. But I think it's probably because of the things that we talked about before, which is more privatization of land and leases and more management and things like that have become.
Yeah, I would agree. It's
always the A and B working together, right? Like it's corn piles and cell cameras that make them deadly, or it's whatever,
Well, it's not that any of those things are inherently negative either. I mean, we're talking about some of the potential consequences of trail cameras, but like, how amazing are trail cameras? Like the fact that we have pictures of these things and like they're just. It's amazing. It's awesome.
It's how most of us manage our property.
Yeah, and the thing that we're missing the point is people enjoy putting out trail cameras, managing their cameras. It's part of the activity. And now you got the states, they're mandating or they're regulating our enjoyment. And again, I mean, we had this conversation back in the day about baiting, and how unfair that was. And, it's all this unfairness. It's like, in my opinion, if you don't like baiting, don't bait. But if the guy next door likes baiting, I mean, that's his prerogative. There's always this internal part that we're always, fighting against each other. And, I mean, whether it's unfair or fair or whatever, I mean, like I said, something will be down the road that it comes in to play that like, man, that's unfair too. And, I mean, it's always going to be something. So, I guess in my opinion, it's kind of like, it just so it gets people out there. Again, I enjoy running cameras. I mean, I enjoy getting up in the morning, having a coffee, and looking at my phone and seeing what was there last night.
Yep.
And that's part of my strategy now. And like it, I'm sure it is for you guys and many others that, they enjoy that part of it. Matter of fact, my wife beats my butt up about it because she's like, get off that damn phone and pay attention to your son.
Yeah,
Like,
same, dude.
Wait a minute, I gotta check.
I have
this
a son.
trail camera.
I usually get caught. It'll be like 5:30 in the morning. She'll be like, "What are you doing?" I was like, "God,
go to sleep.
just looking. During the season's even worse, man. It's like middle of the night. I wake up. I'm like, "Oh shit, what do we got?"
Wow,
here?
dude. Do you guys have a phenomenon like when you shut them off after the season? Like there does come a point where I still have a handful running, but I go from like 25 to like 1 or 2. And after, 2 or 3 days after I power those all off, I'm like, what happened? Like,
Well,
I'm looking at my phone for 4 months straight.
At one point, and I think I do it now, like in the off season, I'll turn off my notifications. During season, notifications are on. Like I want to know if a camera's tripping, right? But like I turned them off. I'll turn my notification off, and I felt like anxiety because I was like, "What the hell? Like I haven't checked these cameras. Like, is there any pictures on it or anything?" And then I go and refresh. I'm like, "Oh, they're all there." So it's just a weird change. But yeah, during season, I have notifications on, especially like late October through mid-November. Like they're rocking.
I don't do notifications, period, on my phone. The only time that makes a noise or vibrates is if I'm getting a phone call.
Text message?
Nope.
Really?
It gets read when I check it.
Interesting.
Do you guys run cell cameras during turkey season? I love running up during turkey season too.
Yeah, I probably have 20.
I'm like, oh shit, that gobbler's there, and he's strutting right in front of my damn camera. I gotta get out there.
I've got mine running during turkey season, usually the pattern birds for the kids and stuff. And then the moment I start seeing good velvet, though, I'm like, I'm lost at that point. I'm all over it. Yeah.
My attention span for turkeys are increasingly just like it's going away. I didn't even go this year
at all.
I went a lot, but I had a bow tag in Minnesota, and we started hunting because an archery tag is good for all the seasons. So you can, you don't have to choose a 7-day period. You can go throughout the entire year. And I didn't even go this year. I went to Iowa and killed a bird early on. And then, I had Vortex come up. I took a guy, Graham from Vortex, out, and he shot a bird. And then several others, but I just didn't have the drive. I had too much else going on, with graduations and all this, other kids' activities that I just didn't have the time. Plus, I don't like getting up at 3 in the morning to go chase a damn turkey.
Yeah, that sucks.
Yeah, that's
that's where I'm at with it. I'm like, is it worth it?
Yeah.
Can I take out of this bucket and dump into deer season, or
How funny is that though? Because it is like if it's like 3:30 in the morning and I'm like I'm supposed to get I don't even think twice about rolling back over. But if it's whitetail, like I'm up at 5 minutes before my alarm goes off, and I'm like, I'm geared, I'm ready to roll.
Oh yeah, even for just like if I have to drill switchgrass in like June, I'm like, I'm going.
Yeah.
But turkey season, I'm like, nah.
Is that right? What's fun? One of the other things I thought of the other day that I don't know, I want to hear your guys' opinion. In my opinion, is really things have really changed in my hunting style. Maybe I'm just getting old and lazier, but I find myself hunting way more now in evening hunting situations than I ever do morning hunts. And I'll tell you why. Because I hunt a lot less in the rut than I have. I don't like hunting the rut because I figure my odds are less at killing a particular, target buck because, of lockdown and those situations and just the way they are not really patternable. But, I got smarter, it seems like, at not putting any undue pressure on them by morning hunting situations. Well, there is opportunity, a smaller percentage opportunity. I feel like if I keep it fresh and just don't pressure them or don't go in there at all in the mornings and put any undue pressure on them and just let them bed naturally, and then let them come to you in the evening, whether it's on a food source or a water source or whatever. It seems like my success is definitely better, and it's definitely gotten over the years better in evening situations. Now, if I go to Canada, that's out the window, but I'm talking, on my farms here in the Midwest. It's kind of like letting the deer just naturally go to bed in the morning and then hunting them more in the evening. So, but what's your guys' opinion on that?
My big thing, I would agree that I probably hunt more in the evening than I do in the morning, and mine is primarily access reasons. Like I have...
That's everybody's. That's why.
My farms are tough for access in the mornings. I have a couple that, a couple new access places that's going to help with that. But yeah, I have tough access, blowing them off of food and stuff. I feel comfortable getting out of a stand even after dark and slipping out while they're out in a field or something. But going in the morning, not nearly as comfortable.
I mean, it's kind of like common sense. If you just think about like, hey, I need to get to this spot in the woods or wherever, and think about how deer are moving at times of the day. And so if it's like at night, before you're getting ready to go in for a morning hunt, it's like they're up and they're doing this. They're up and moving. You're like, okay, what's my likelihood of getting in there clean? It's much less when they're doing this than when in the afternoon. We know a majority of deer are maybe there's a little bit of this movement, but they're just generally staying where they're at.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Just getting wiser. I mean, think about it. Like, growing up when I was in high school, I hunted every opportunity I got. And if I walked in and blew deer out of a field, I'm like, they're here. Like they're here. So, that's just the thought process that came across. I didn't care. I was looking for a 3-inch spike. I didn't give a shit what was out there.
Dude, that's funny you say that. I can remember the very first tree stand I ever hunted was when I would have been 12 years old. Dad's like, you go to your spot down there. I can remember walking through like this apple orchard and deer were blowing everywhere. And I thought the same thing. I was like, there's a shit ton of deer here. Like, you know what I mean? Like, we're in them.
We're in them.
I had no idea. I was like bumping them or whatever.
Yeah. Now you'd be like, oh, shit, I messed it up.
Yeah, I blew this whole farm. It's done.
There'd be when I was younger, I would get up extremely early. And even into my professional career, I would get up super early, try to get out there like, I'm talking like 2 hours at least before daylight, before legal. And that way, a lot of times you could walk kind of through the deer and they might scamper a little bit, but they didn't like freak out like they did when, because it was so dark.
Yeah.
A lot of times that, it wasn't a tinge of daylight. And then they wouldn't really spook as hard, and then you could get in your stand and things would settle down, and by daylight it was like you hadn't even walked through the deer because they were all back to their natural pattern or movement. And that's the way we used to hunt them. But I remember hunting with a guy named, you probably don't even remember this guy, named Bob Folkrod. He was killer.
Oh yeah, Bob's a PA guy.
Yeah. And I was hunting with him, man. We got out, we went out there in almost the middle of the night. And I'm like, plus it was a time change. I remember there was like a time change. So we were like sitting in the stand and I'm like, this is nuts. I'm sitting here for like 3.5, 4 hours before it gets light. I'm like, and then we're like, it's never getting light. It's like, what happened? Did something just go wrong with the earth? The sun is not coming up. And I'm like, Bob's like, he's like, I think we messed up and we forgot about the time change. And I'm like, oh my God. So we were out there extremely early. But one thing that I, learned sitting there, in the dark forever is that, you're just pretty much listening to everything that's going on, and deer, coming, going, fighting, grunting, doing their thing. There's a lot of activity, obviously, that happens in the dark. We all know that because we watch our cameras now. But back then there wasn't, cameras. But man, it just we sat there forever, and all this activity's going on around our stand, close by, and then it gets daylight and it's like evaporated, like nothing. You're like, what the hell?
Yeah.
I mean, we know there's deer here, but all of a sudden it gets light and they're just like vanished. And they're somewhere else, or they're already bedded. So, you know, that was back in the day, man. Bob Folkrod, he's a true legend. He a lot of people are like, I've gotten a chance to hunt with some really, really insane cool people over the years, and just run the camera behind them. You know, Greg Miller, Stan Potts of the world. I mean, there's a lot of guys. Miles Keller was a cool guy that I really started with. He was kind of a legendary archer.
I was just saying, people think Miles is one of the best, if not the best, big buck archery killers of all time.
He's the one that paved the way. Honestly, Chuck Adams was not as known in the whitetail world as Miles was. Miles was a Minnesota boy, and he's still alive, and I see him here and there. But he was. Yeah, he worked on the county, and I think he ran a road grader, and he would pattern deer just by, working, on those rural roads and stuff, and getting access. Getting permission back then was nothing. Right. But he was a stone cold killer, and I learned a lot from guys like all those guys, just sitting, hanging with them in the tree, learning their hunting styles and their philosophies, and how they call deer, how they hunt deer. Like, I truly appreciate all, and some of them have opposite hunting styles, to be honest with you. You're like, well, this guy does rattles all the time, and the other go sit over with somebody else and they don't hardly call at all. And you're like, well, why is that? I mean, you're hunting similar deer, similar areas. Why would one do something? Stan Potts liked hunting using decoys a lot. Greg Miller liked rattling a lot. Stan, he taught me one thing a long time ago about a big deer. Whether you like Stan Potts or not, he's killed a lot of big deer in his life. So, and he did it, he had a lot of great methods and tactics to use. If he saw a big deer on a pattern, or he saw a big deer doing something, he would hunt that deer on that premise shortly thereafter, figuring that if that deer is doing something once, he'll probably repeat it soon after, or will do it again. And he's right, because deer are a lot like humans, they kind of get into a pattern, and as long as it's, shortly after, a short period after you see them do something, they a lot of times repeat that pattern. And he would go, like, if it's walking on a fence line and going across an open field, he'd go set up and hunt that deer the following day on that fence line, as long as the wind was good, and a lot of times kill the deer because that deer was on that pattern before he changed that pattern for some reason. So, there's a lot of things to be learned from those old boys. That's for sure.
Yeah. I mean, I think it's really cool to kind of hear all of the different, and that's one of the things we love about this podcast, is we try to start to really examine and get into detail on how everybody hunts. Like, we talked to a Mark Drury, who is very much I'm in the farm, I get my stuff done, I'm out of the farm, and I stay out of the farm. You talk to Lee Lukoski, and he's like, I'm on it all the time. Like, they know I'm there everywhere. I'm literally all over that place, except for like certain areas. And so you start to hear, or Ben Rising, which, hell, it may not even be Ben's property. Somebody just drops him in, and he just goes in and figures out how to kill a big buck. Like, that's just what he does. So yeah, you hear all of these different stories and tactics and styles, and it's like, well, they're all successful.
We have the luxury of being able to talk with everybody, and then go out and test them for ourselves, whether it be from a management standpoint with, we talked to a bunch of, consultant type guys. And then on the hunting aspect, there's guys that are, have earned their title in that space as well.
Yeah. Some of them guys really are good at, I think that over the years, you just learn this, but, they can walk in the woods, and they can look around, and they can pick a tree and go, that's the tree. That's the killing tree right there. And when they're, you don't know what's going through their mind for them to have that gut feeling like that's the spot. That's where I'm going to kill them. I mean, it's kind of an art, and a gut feeling that they have, that they know how to pick the spot, and for one reason or another, right? So I've always appreciated that and tried to mimic those same things myself,
So
over the years, is being able to quickly identify, get set up on the deer, use, your knowledge and your expertise to, gamble that spot's the best spot. And we all do that. I mean, every single one of us deer hunters are like, man, which tree do we hunt? That one or this one? And we're trying to figure out winds and, silhouetted or non-silhouetted and all this stuff. And hell, I've sat in bushes, that are 2 feet off the ground before.
Well, so Pat, what do you think of this?
Do whatever you can.
What do you think of this? We're kind of like a weird evolutionary phase here, I think, to where I think a lot of guys, or, we feel pretty confident that it's like, I can go to a property, as long as they're there. And most guys can read topography. Most guys can, like, pick the tree. You can go to X marks the spot, and if you sit there long enough, like, you'll probably get it done. I feel like beyond that is like there may be something that is like, how do I know where that is, and how do I back off it to an area where I can still kill that deer? I know I'm going to kill the deer, but I want to allow them to have their, because I want these deer to get old. I want to give them deer space to grow and to get old, and I have to stay out of that X marks the spot to do it. I got to kill them from a fringe spot. Do you think that's like, is there anything to that? Is that
Well, I think there's a couple things. Yeah. I mean, the world has changed as well with blinds, the permanent blinds that we're using now.
Yeah.
I mean, it's putting us out in the middle of the field, and we're killing the deer out of permanent blind structures, or even pop-up, ground blinds. Back in the day, not a single person did that. I remember when Jay Gregory killed the first deer out of a double bull blind, and everybody's like,
he was the first
how
one?
could that be done? We all thought it was just for turkeys,
Yeah.
And they started putting them in cornfields, and then, one thing led to another, and everybody generally, a lot of people hunt out of blinds now, for one reason or another, whether it's scent, whether it's just positioning, and, they just give you, like, they conceal your movements, they conceal, like I said, your scent, everything else. I can take my kids, I couldn't do that stuff in a tree stand before. There's definitely an element of safety, involved in, sitting in a blind versus sitting in a tree stand, and all this stuff. I'm old school. I still like crawling in a tree stand, even in sub-zero conditions. You feel like it's old school, but I mean, it's not. It's just real. It's real hunting to me. I mean, it's just the way I grew up, right? So, I mean, I grew up hammering a 2x6 to the two
exactly,
trees,
dude.
and putting a piece of plywood on top of it, and hoping the squirrels didn't chew the shit out of it.
Well, a big part of the experience is exposure to the elements.
I was going to say,
the blind takes that away, which is nice sometimes, but it's like, boy, is it refreshing to just sit outside and feel the wind and
well, not being able to hear and have those. I mean, you can kill. Everybody is killing deer out of blinds and big blinds. Yeah, you killed that one out of one. But I think, like, when you put me in one, I'm like, man, I feel like I can't hear anything. I'm moving more because I can't hear as much. Like, there's just a lot of things, and it's probably personal preference too, but there's just a lot of advantages to just being in the elements and having that, comfortability and ability to hear and see all around you.
It's a choice too. I would almost
say, I mean, you know what? Hey, if a guy can't physically get into a tree stand and he sits in a blind, I mean, good for him, right? I mean, he's still out there doing it. And again, I like taking my young son and teaching him hunting, and we can do that in a blind. I mean, and he can still be preoccupied if he wants to get on, my phone and play a game while we pass the time. Hey, that keeps him out there and keeps him entertained, and he don't get bored, and he wants to repeat the process or go again. I mean, you know what? that's what it's about. And, again, I do it, but I still like the element of, I'll still do the hang and hunt thing, I mean, we'll take stands on our backs and all our camera gear and go in and set up in in the middle of the woods in a pinch or a funnel situation, pre dawn and get set up and hunt the whole entire day in there. And that's true hardcore. I mean, this is as good as it gets right there. And that's, everybody's got a different style of how they hunt and what they enjoy. So
yeah, well, and,
whatever works,
and you're allowed to do all of it. I mean, that's the great thing. Is like on our farms,
right.
It's like we've got some hard-sided blinds. Maybe we'd like to have some more, but there's an expense factor. Yep. We've got some ladder stands that I hunt out of increasingly just because they're comfortable and they're safe and they're permanent. There's nothing better than climbing into a stand that's locked in and ready to go. But and we just said, right behind you, there's sitting a Lone Wolf custom gear. It's like when it's time to run a gun, and that's what you got to do. I mean, that's what you do.
Yeah, I want to be mobile.
Yeah, I've hunted out of pop-up blinds.
If you come to my farm right now, and I took you into our interior plots or something where I have an interior bean plot that's probably 3/4 of an acre, half an acre in size, and then I'll have a water source there, whether it's a pond I dug or an earth pond or whatever, and I'll have apple trees and I'll have a green plot there around the water source. So it's kind of like a multiple drawing effect, whether it's the beans that I fence off and protect so they don't get overbrowsed. I set it up for the entire seasonal swing to where, when they start, they might need water early because it's hot and dry, and a green source that they're on green until the colder periods when they start to go on grains. I mean, that becomes an entire food plot for that hunting area right there, draws in the deer the entire season. So I don't have to shift my strategy and go somewhere else where the deer are. They are always going to be there, from the beginning to the end. But I'll have a blind there. If you come there, and I'd show you, I'll have a blind there for a lot of times for when I hunt with the kids or a gun hunting situation. But I'll also have 2 different tree stand sets, double sets, because we're filming it. I'll have them generally over the water source in 2 different wind situations. So I have 3 different setups and a half an acre piece that I can go in there and hunt pretty much almost in any wind situation and be able to put myself within archery range of a deer if it comes into that spot. Yeah. And of course, then I run cameras on them to tell me, what the deer's pattern is. And last year we had a buck. This is right behind our house. We had a buck that was a mature deer that was 5.5, and we'd had years of sheds and history of this deer. And he was a real nocturnal deer. And then he started to, around middle November, which is odd for deer in Minnesota because usually they go underground because of the gun hunting pressure. We don't gun hunt really that hard, so we don't really put any pressure on our property. But just in general, from everybody around us hunting, that usually turns the deer nocturnal, for until into December when they kind of come out of that pattern when there's no pressure, from gun hunters. Right. But this deer was on a pattern, and I told Nicole it was Thanksgiving, and I'm like, we need to go. He's going to be back in that plot tomorrow night because the wind is good. We need to be sitting there. So we went and sat in that plot, and he was coming into the beans, and the pond, my water was already frozen over at that point. But that deer, we sat in the blind that night with Cashton because it was Thanksgiving, and we just kind of had Thanksgiving morning breakfast instead of dinner. And then we got in the blind and we're sitting there, and he came out just like he did the night before. but he did not come into the beans. That he went over to that water and he pawed around on ice for a while, and then he just turned and he left, and he walked over into he just left the food source and the area, and then went and ate. Sorry, I could see him off eating acorns because we had a hell of an acorn crop last year. And then I told Nicole, I said, tomorrow night I said the exact same weather. There's no change in everything. I said we need to be in those tree stands over that frozen pond because he's going to do the exact same thing. I'll bet you money. And so I said, but we're not going to sit in this blind. He could come in the beans, but he's going to use that. He's going to go to that water again. And so we went and got in those tree stands, and that next night he came in like an hour before dark, and she smoked him right standing on that frozen ice. So that just goes to show you that's kind of like what you hope for. I mean, we patterned them, and we had it all set up to where he was coming in for a reason. So pretty cool.
Definitely. You can man, there's like a lot packed into that whole story, just even all the way back to creating a year-round situation. I think that's something that we do more and more of too. Not just from like a maximization of a spot, because the spots are chosen based off of access.
Yeah.
And you want to do everything in terms of habitat manipulation and bringing food to like stretch the opportunity out across the season as much as you can. But in doing so, you can also support multiple mature buck movement patterns. In theory. So the alternative would be, and this is, I think, Jeff Sturgis is, where's Sturgis from? Wisconsin?
He's living in Minnesota now.
Minnesota? That was kind of like, that was probably the first time I heard it, was we're talking about, well, I used to do like a brassica plot here and a clover plot here and a bean field over here. And he was like, well, why would you do that? Because, they're going to be here when this is preferable, and then here when this is preferable, and then here. As opposed to, if you have the acreage to support it, why wouldn't you maximize this spot with a diversity of food options, and this spot with the same, and this spot with the same? And that seems to, it was really confusing at first. When we first heard, I was like, what do you mean? How would you even do that?
Yeah.
But now I'm like, oh yeah, you're right. And if maybe it's not all in one case, maybe all of those are, green food sources oriented to one or two bigger grain destination type food sources. But you can do that.
What I do on my farms, this is my strategy. If I set up a farm or we get a new farm, first thing I do is I really try to identify, the different bedding areas, really the buck bedding areas, because, and then I set up my plots, and I set up my water, and I set up everything for those, and access is obviously a crucial part for me too. But I want to know, because I'm trying to figure out those bedding areas that are consistently holding those bucks to come up and use those. I'm trying to build those drawing spots or food plots and water holes and all that stuff. I want to get them near those bedding areas, so there's not a long transition, period for the deer to get up out of their bed and come into because of daylight opportunity. So I build those near those areas, providing that it's good access in. And then I monitor them, when I do get them constructed. That way I know what bedding area those bucks are using, and those particular doe groups are using. And in our region, it seems like each ridge system has its own mature buck, and they don't a lot of times differentiate, or they don't move around as much because they're very territorial and very homey, that they like that area. Obviously, probably grown up there, they know it's safe, and they like those bedding areas, and for one reason or another, and that changes throughout the season, with temperature and thermal cover and stuff. But my opinion is I'm drawing them into those food sources and that water source coming off of that bedding area. And then I know his pattern, and and I have on one farm, if I have different bedding areas, each one of those bedding areas has a spot set up. So when those deer start showing up on camera, I know the pattern, and then we go in there and hunt them, and generally shoot the deer because I'm not guessing. It's not that the deer can't use, from one day to the next, but if I see him in the morning on camera, like right at daylight or, shortly before daylight, I know that there's probably a 85 to 90% chance that deer is going to be back in that same plot using that water hole that night, because he's right in the area. He's going to be bedding pretty close. And so, it's not rocket science at that point.
Dude, those water sources are so overlooked by myself included.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, especially when you consider, where I'm at in Ohio, most of our bedding and buck bedding, when you identify that, is not hard to figure out. It's just basically, generally on eastern facing knobs or hillsides or the clear cuts, kind of above them that we've timbered and stuff. And so we do the same thing, Pat, try to localize food sources and water and our tree stand and all the access kind of around that situation. And on 100 acres, you might have like 2 or 3 of them, depending on how the topography lays. You might just have 1 of them or none.
HUNTR Podcast is brought to you by Pure Wildlife Blends.
Yeah, buddy. We're doing a lot of food plots this year. It seems like the planning, the preparation, like the coordinating for getting everything, in the ground, is like it just never ends.
Yeah, and I just got off an 18-hour bender where I'm on multiple farms getting everything ready. But this year, fortunately, we've got Pure Wildlife Blends, which is Jeff Sturgis. Who better to partner with for our food plot program than a guy who's got 30 years of experience, been on thousands of farms. I mean, the guy lives and breathes food plots.
Yeah, and so the blends themselves are all handpicked by Jeff, and it's like, man, we've had a lot of conversations with him over the years, and he's been pretty influential in how we set up farms and stuff. And frankly, the product, it's in the name. It's Pure Wildlife Blend. So a lot of these other seeds that you see that are blue and orange or all these things, it's because they're coated with lime and they're dyed, and it's marketing at the end of the day. So we have a lot of confidence in the seeds that Jeff has chose, and that's what we're going to be planting this year. And so right now, you can use code HUNTR10 for 10% off anything on the website.
So if you're looking for switch, clover, brassica, or Jeff's favorite, layer in the rye.
Layer in the rye.
Yep. Check out purewildlifeblends.com. You were talking about water holes.
Well, I was just saying, like, just the nature of like where those bedding areas are at is like, there's generally not a water source up near them.
No.
And undoubtedly, like, especially on those warmer days, like that's on their mind. Maybe even
it's more than food.
Probably even more than food. And so if you can realize that and think, oh yeah, like there's that bedding knob that I'm trying to hunt, he's on this knob there. If you can give him a water source that gives him convenience to be able to hit that on the way to food, that's a big, I think, overlooked advantage.
Yeah.
Think about like my original clover plot on Hinton. That's
one of the, we've hunted water forever. And if you've watched Driven, you've seen us kill a lot of big deer over water. I mean, deer, one thing they can't go without is water. They have to have water every day. A buck can go without food, during the rut period for days, but he has to have water every day. And a buck will drink anywhere from 4 to 6 quarts of water per 100 pounds of body weight. So, they'll drink 8 to 12 quarts of water a day, especially when they're rutting. They're spending a lot of and dehydrating really. So they're thirsty just because of their movements. In hot conditions, same thing. They search that water. A lot of times they'll just get up and go to water. But I always tell everybody, when I do seminars, I'm like, listen, I said, it's just like you. If you have a 2-story home and your master bedroom's on the 2nd story, and your water, you have 2 water sources, you have a bathroom upstairs and you have a kitchen sink downstairs. I mean, you're not going to go all the way downstairs in the middle of the night. You're going to go over in the bathroom, get a quick drink, and then you're going to go back to bed. And that's the way deer operate too. They're going to go to the nearest water source that they like and utilize that. And we just have to make those water sources available. And I've been, I've been hunting water. I'd rather hunt water than anything else, way over food. But I use it in combination now. I've been putting a lot of these earth ponds in. They're a fiberglass molded water tank basically, but they're tapered and they feel and look just like the dirt. So they're gritty, and then the deer can walk right into the center of them. It's just a gradual taper, and they don't have black plastic. They don't look unnatural. They're very natural looking. And I even put dirt in the bottom, a little bit of them, but they never leak because they're fiberglass. And the biggest one they make is a 250 gallon, but I put them right now in the middle of in front of my blinds in my food source. So it's like putting a rub post out there or a licking branch. It's exactly what I'm going to do to draw them in. And most every deer that comes out in the food plot, even if it's a 5-10 acre plot, they walk right to the water source. Eventually they're going to be standing right in front of me and drinking out of that water source. And I tested this last year because I didn't know how this was going to work, because I have ponds in the inside in the timber that are real near the bedding. And then I had this earth pond out in the food source itself. I'm thinking, well, it'll be interesting to see if they go to that interior water hole that I dug years ago, or they come out and they use this one, because I had cameras on both. And more times than not, I don't know why, but they would prefer coming out into the wide open and going to that water hole than they would going to the interior one. They'd walk right by it and come out into the field.
Interesting.
And then they would, a lot of times, would eat a little bit, and then I was like, oh man, I'm thirsty. And then they would come and get a drink and work their way over. And maybe it was because they felt safer because it's in the wide open. I'm not sure of that process or that theory or what they're thinking, but I'm telling you, you guys need to try this. It's a game changer. We're putting all of our water right now in those plots, right to where it's all like right in archery range, and every single deer walks right in, doe, bucks, whatever, come right to the water source. And it don't matter if there's a water source 100 yards away. They come in there, and I give them, that's where my shot opportunity always is. So it's definitely became, 100%. I would never even put in a plot without not putting in water.
Wow.
My kid, my son Carson, a big deer hunter, like he has a property that he hunts, and he had me help him set it up a couple years ago. And it's in a valley, and up here in our valleys we have trout streams, right? And they're super clear, cold water. You can physically, a person can drink the water out of them. It's that pure water. And so right in the bottom of the valley is this trout stream, and he had a food plot next to the stream. And he said, Dad, what do you think about putting in a water hole there? I was like, well, I mean, the deer are crossing the creek to come to the food plot. I don't know if that's going to do you any good. But I said, you know what? You can try it. So we went down and put a water hole in the food plot. And I'll be damned if those deer will cross the cold stream that you and I can drink out of, and walk over and drink out of that muddy, nasty water they piss in, and rather drink that than that nice clear water. Mm-hmm. And so I've known this forever, because it seems like this always happens, like, why do the deer prefer one water source over another, right? A lot of times it's nasty, stagnant mud puddles and stuff. And I talked to, I think maybe it was Grant Woods or something, and they told me, he said it's because of the palatability or the taste of the water and what's happening with that water. He says it's when natural decay happens with leaf matter and other minerals in the soil start to break down, it gives that water a good flavor versus that clear cold water does not have that taste and what they like. It's that mineral breakdown that they get from that nastier, stagnant water.
We were checking out some of those earth ponds. Those look pretty legit. There's not a dealer real close to us here. The biggest I see is 250 gallons. Is that enough, do you think? Or do you think?
Yeah, it is. It is in our country, but the nicest part about it, I put in 80 gallons that are in the timber because I don't have those big areas. But the thing that I go put these in, a 250 gallon, I need a skid steer I sink them into the ground so they're flush. And so they look completely natural. I mean, you could set it right on the top, but I want to level it. I put a level in the middle and I dig them out with a skid steer a little bit. I'm an 80 gallon you can do with a shovel.
Right.
But you can instantly, I pull up with my truck. I went and bought a 250 gallon or maybe a 300 gallon, I don't remember, a water tank at a farm store that has a hydrant or spigot on it. And I just fill that up at home and I just back right up, open her up, and immediately I have a plumb full thing. And if I need to maintain that water level, if it's a dry year, I can back up and fill these things up easy enough with the 4-wheeler or the truck and then, get out of there, have the cameras on them. But the most beneficial thing, especially for you guys, not as much for us, but they're fiberglass lined. There's no mud. So there's no gnat, EHD issues. And, that's a big concern for everybody that's more in the southern part of the Midwest. So
I think it's huge, man. We've heard more and more people talk about that. I mean, because, anytime you're looking at a property to buy, you're like, okay, what do I've got? I've got open areas I can put food. I've got streams or creeks that I've got water, right? And that's but we've heard it more and more where it's like, these deer prefer stagnant, just nasty water for their use. That's what they want.
Yeah. I don't see deer drink out of creeks.
Which is crazy.
You see them drink out of even like hoof prints and stuff, just like little stagnant, like on the road, little
old logging road, like stagnant ponds,
but not really out of the freshwater stream. Yeah.
Yeah, they'll go and they'll play around in it, and they like that mud, and I don't know what it is, but they wallow in it basically. So that everybody is listening right now. If they do one thing that's going to improve their deer hunting and kill big bucks, is they can go and put a water hole right in their water, whether they dig it out and line it or they put in an earth pond or whatever. If they do that, 100% it's going to change their hunting. I can promise them. I don't care what part of the country they're living in.
And I'm behind again.
I agree. I think in the next 2 weeks, even before this conversation, that's where my head was kind of at. I've got 2 I think that need to go in. Yeah. And they're, funny enough, one of them is like, it's pretty textbook. It's like it is going to be the most convenient option for them to come out of bedding. But the other one is going to be across a stream. I'm talking like East Twin. There's just a natural indentation in the ground there. So they're going to have to walk across the stream to get there. But I think they will. I think
see that natural one I backed the tractor up into to try, and I would have got it stuck. That's all I could get it. But I opened it up enough. I'll be interested to see how they use that. I bet they're all through it.
If there's water in it, they'll use it.
Yeah.
Even if you're in the timber, say you got a tree stand that's on a pinch or a funnel. In my opinion, why wouldn't you
that's huge,
water source there? Because it becomes an extra reason for a deer to come there, whether it's a doe and a buck following her or whatever. It just creates a better opportunity that you're going to increase more deer activity there, and your chances are going to go up because you have the water source versus nothing.
Yeah.
Nothing deters about the water, deters them from coming there. It only enhances it and draws them in. So, and these things are just, they're game changers, 100%. I mean, I've been a super big advocate about them forever. And we shoot them. nobody can say, oh, that's just kind of a bunch of phoniness that he's trying to promote. I mean, I'm not making any money by telling you to use water.
Sure.
That's for sure.
Well, let me ask you this, Pat. So there was a time as I was like getting better, more acquainted with food plots and stuff, that it's like everywhere I went, I'm like, we should have food plot here. We should have food plot here. And I think somewhere along the way, I realized that like maybe I was having a negative effect by putting food too close to buck bedding. I was like, hey, I'm displacing, anything that would have bedded in this location or near to it is now we're pushing them back. And I think I have
you're bumping them getting in there because they're
sure.
I mean, that's access really. I don't like getting them too close because I mean, they're sitting there laying there all day. They can hear a squirrel at 100 yards chatting, and they're like, what the hell is that? And they just listen to every little thing. So unless you're ultra quiet, I mean, one little stand pop is going to that's not natural, and it's not going to make them come your way. So you got to get within, get out of earshot of them for sure. And if you're real close, there's a good chance, unless it's windy, they're gonna pick you off.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and I
mean, that's another thing that we could talk all day on is, access. One of the things that's really put the odds in our favor is just all electric, I mean, we use Player, e-bike, Rambo e-bikes. It's just, we never use a gas power to get into our spots, and it's always silent. A silent approach is the best. And a lot of times, hunt more of the center of our properties because I want the deer coming into the center instead of going out, for particular reasons. So that's why I plant a lot of food more in the center of the property.
Yeah.
To pull from the outside in instead of getting the deer on the edge where the neighbor can kill them or whatever. But that's kind of our strategy.
Pat, you broke up a little on that. Are you using the Polaris Kinetic, did you say?
Yeah. I used to use the old EVs,
yeah.
But now they made the Kinetics, but I have the new Kinetics now that, are complete, and they got a hell of a lot more range.
Yeah.
I can drive 10 miles to my spot and use the electric and then go back home and still have battery,
Yeah. It seems like those Kinetics they've made the biggest leap on the ability to have like an actual UTV that you could still use for spraying and everything else, but then also from a standpoint of getting in and going up ridges and stuff, like it's got enough torque to do all of that.
Yeah, it's got more torque than a 1000 gas engine,
which is what we have. The 1000s.
Can a Kinetic overheat?
No.
I gotta be honest with you. I've been having issues recently with. I've got an older Ranger, and pulling a pull behind sprayer through tilled dirt. It doesn't like that for very long, especially in the heat.
That's not your new one.
It's an older Ranger.
One.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. The only thing, I mean, these are lithium batteries. They, cold affects all batteries, but they have a heater, battery heater, built into the Kinetics now.
Wow.
So that kicks in and helps keep the battery life, or keeps that battery warm. And there's no issues as much as there used to be with cold. And we don't get real hot up here, but I've never ever had, I mean, it gets warm, never had an issue with a heat on a battery. But again, I don't know, but we just don't live in that kind of environment. So.
Yeah. Yeah, those Kinetics more and more seem, besides like...
And they're super affordable too, right? Only like 40 grand.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say. Besides the price side of it, like it seems like, yeah, I mean, at some point I'll trade my 1,000 in for one, I'm sure. But yeah. Well,
you guys are making way too much money at this podcast.
Oh yeah, for sure.
Yeah, we got to write it off. Oh, and we're in
We don't know what to do with all this money.
Sorry, Nick. We're going to have to cut your salary. But they do make two versions. They have like a normal Kinetic that's like 29-ish. And then the ultimate is like 36 or something.
Yeah, that's just got a little bigger battery system and stuff like that. But I have a couple of them. I love them. The new Kinetics you can get them fully cabbed with a heater. Talk about it.
Jeez.
Before you were freezing your nuts off just driving an electric. But the point is, even in the old days, we used all electrics all the time. And even if you're driving near or close to a bedding area, if you went through there with an electric, the amount of pressure you put on the deer versus walking is it's a difference, because they just are like, they don't know what it is. They might be a little bit on guard, but then it's like it comes and goes, versus a human walking is just not acceptable to them. That's a predation thing, and they don't like that, and they're out of there. They'll mess up the hunt. So we like, electrics have just become, our method of transportation in and out, and no less scent, obviously, that kind of thing. And we never use a gas engine at all. And the deer you can pull right up on them deer, when they're in the field, with an electric, and they're like looking at you like, what, how come I didn't hear you coming? It's kind of like you can read their mind. They're like, this is weird.
Yeah. Well, it's amazing how far you can hear gas vehicles too. Like, you may think that, like, when you're going in, you're like, I'm pretty quiet. When somebody comes to pick you up and you hear it fire up from the house, you're like, oh,
yeah,
that's pretty loud.
Yeah. We were trying to get up in turkey hunt with them this year, because I had the kids, and we were going way in the back in Ohio, and like, we're going up, and I'd stop and I'd hear a bird, and I'm like, all right, we'll just move up here 200 more yards. Well, it's like a freight train coming through the woods, another 200 yards. By the time we get there, that bird's like, yeah, I don't think so.
Out.
Yeah, I love, there's been situations where I've been sitting in a tree stand, and I'll have a fairly mature buck close by that I'm watching his, his behavior, and maybe the neighbor, something fires up, or another hunter. This is in Buffalo County when I used to hunt there, and I'd hear the guy coming in to go to his stand on the adjacent property, and he'd still be on the other ridge, and and it starts to get closer, and the buck starts to really tune in on it, and they listen to it, and they just sit there and study, and they follow that sound until the guy shuts it off, gets off, clanking around, might cough a little bit, and they are analyzing the whole time, and they would if they were in their bed too.
Yeah,
they're analyzing what's going on, what that guy's doing, and then they hear him walking. The last thing they're going to do is go that direction.
Yeah,
so you're already shooting yourself in the foot when they can hear you, and so that element of staying undetected is always the best practice. And we do that. We talk about it in seminars, or we talk about it to all deer hunters. They're like, well, I try to keep my hunting fresh. It's always like the deer never feel like they're being hunted. Even when we get out of our stand, we'll have somebody come in and pick us up and blow them out if I'm in a field situation. But if I don't have that luxury, I bark them out, and I always I never crawl out and let them ever see me crawling out or hear me crawling out, because then that old doe programs, or any deer for that matter, but mainly the older does program that there's danger in that tree. And then the next time after that, they come in and they go downwind of it, or they analyze that spot. If they pick you off, then they blow again. So barking them out, and I don't bark like a coyote. I bark like a dog. I don't know if you've heard dogs chasing deer, but when a dog is close to a deer, they bark in a really fast, really loud cadence. And if I'm sitting in a tree, it's dead silent or a blind, field is full, I just hit them so hard that they hear this dog, and it's, and they are all flying in every direction. And the last thing they're doing is studying where the sound's coming from. But if I howled, they would just pick up and look like at the sound, and then they'd probably pick me off. But I'm scattering them so fast and hard that they run for a period to try to get away from that immediate sound in theory, and they get out of the food source and back in the timber far enough away where I can quietly slip out of there without being detected. And the next day they're back in there, because they don't feel they don't go, wow, where's that dog,
Interesting.
Meanwhile,
I've never heard that.
Your neighbor just got off the four-wheeler was like, what the fuck is that guy doing?
He's making so much noise.
We laugh every time we do it, especially if I take a new guy that doesn't ever heard of it. He's like, holy shit.
You don't even tell him you're going to do it. You just start sounding off. He's like, Jesus.
I'm telling you, try it this year. You'll be amazed, but you got to bark loud and you got to bark fast. And,
that's a success.
And then we'll go snipe hunting afterwards.
We'll be leaving the country. But I'll look at my cameras and 15 minutes later, they're right back in the pot.
Yeah.
Really? Do you think it even matters what sound you make? Do you think?
Well, a dog, I like dogs because dogs, they hear dogs, in most situations. They know what a dog is. Mm-hmm. And I don't like I said, if you've ever heard of
Jeremy's deer definitely know what dogs are.
Yeah, they got dogs up their ass every day. What are you going to do? Moo at them?
Yeah.
Moo.
Yeah, it ain't gonna spook them. A dog, even a coyote don't really spook many deer because they hear the son of bitches all the time. It's a dog that works like a charm, and you got to do it
loud
in that fast, loud cadence, and it'll blow them out.
I'm gonna have to go and practice.
Yeah, my deer for sure used to having dogs up their ass, so I'm sure we'll get them out of there.
I'm sure they won't like it.
Yeah, they won't like it.
I hate dogs. I love dogs. I'm a dog guy, but I hate dogs that bother deer.
Oh, dude. I get them on camera weekly, and I'm just twitching.
That messes your deer hunting up because your deer on a pattern, and and all of a sudden this dog comes by, and you go and hunt, and you're like, what? I didn't see shit tonight. Well, the dog cleared your bedding area or whatever and disrupted everything, and they got to go as soon as you see them.
So what's the method of taking care of dogs? You taught us something there for how to imitate a dog. How do you get rid of one?
Shoot them, trap them, or snare them.
Yeah.
That's it.
Poison. You got to be careful with poison because you get something else. But, whatever methods you can do to get them. We set up trail cameras for dogs, honestly, and just try to pick them off. As soon as we see them on the camera, we try to get over there and get them killed, when you can get a visualization on them and kill them with a gun.
You got any wolves that you're dealing with up there?
Oh, yeah. Yeah. Not where I live, but, oh, my God, Minnesota and northern Wisconsin has serious wolf issues. You guys have EHD issues down there? All these guys up here are dealing with major wolf issues. And the problem is we live in a liberal state that, protects wolves and doesn't protect deer. So they don't care nothing. And they don't even want to, the DNR doesn't even want to talk about what has honestly happened to the moose population and now the deer population. The wolves have cleaned them out. Cleaned house. And they are like, well, guys that used to go traditionally, Minnesota always had deer in the north. They never had deer in the south. Now they have deer in the south and none in the north because there's wolves. But they have decimated and cleaned out the moose and the deer. And now guys talk about sitting an entire season not even seeing a deer in northern Minnesota or Wisconsin, which is nuts because it's devastated it. And we were just on a wolf. We're on a panel this spring in Minnesota for delisting the wolf from the protected species list and trying to reclassify it so they could open a hunting season just to help try to manage a little bit of the wolf population. But, you got to have a lot of public support. And quite honestly, with a bunch of liberals that, tree huggers that live in, Minnesota and in these parts, it's really hard to do because they have the voice, and there are not enough sportsmen that will step up and say, yeah, I think we need to kill these damn wolves. And and then even bears, bears are, you don't see them chasing deer, but the damn bears eat the fawns like crazy in the spring.
Yeah.
So, there's that too, but they manage the bears though, with hunting. But because of wolves, the wolf thing, too many dang tree huggers.
Well, it's just so messed up. I mean, you look at from a management side, whether it's bears or deer or whatever, moose, like it's managed at the state level because of this federal listing of wolves on where they're at. The wolves around the Great Lakes can't be managed like the other species by the state because it's a federal thing, and it ruins it because, again, you've got this public, perception that wolves are these iconic things. Like, yeah, we want more wolves until they're in your backyard eating your kid or something, right? And until that, it's just like the mountain lions out in California. Like, everybody's like, well, don't kill the mountain lion. Well, then when it's in your backyard in a cul-de-sac and kids are out playing, now it's like, well, what do we do with all these mountain lions? It's like, well, we should have been killing them.
Mm-hmm.
Right. If you want to get views, that's how to get views, is just go hunting species like wolves and mountain lions and stuff, because I've done it, and man, you get a lot of haters, but I always say haters are helpers. So and you get a lot of people defending you, but there's certainly more anti-hunting movements and tree huggers that chime in. I don't know why they're on my forums and my sites, but they are. And you try to educate them, but you can't educate stupid sometimes. So that's just the way it is. But they're a problem here, and they're going to continue to be a problem. And they're expanding, of course, with their population's growing. And in Canada, which we started talking about in the beginning, they secretly manage them, and they don't do it publicly. But I know people that manage wolves up there, and they do it for the government. And they shoot them suckers, and they shoot them out of helicopters in the winter, and they can clean house with helicopters on wolves.
Yeah.
And they do it just to help more or less the moose populations, because they decimate the wool. The wolves decimate the moose.
Yeah. Because most of them have one calf, and then that calf's getting pummeled. And that's it.
Well, they'll kill the whole entire bunch of them, and sometimes do it for fun. They don't even do it for food. They just go, and they have such a big home range that they don't just eat in one spot. They just move around and kill in many different areas. So they're very proficient, and they're hard to get trapping. I know guys that trap them up there in the Yukon, and you can snare them, and you'll get most of them on a snare set on a moose kill, but you are not going to get them all. And the one that you don't get, you will never get, because he's that smart. He's learned, and he just avoids it. So it's really hard to manage wolves, but they do it with helicopters, and they do it pretty effectively. But they don't publicize it at all. But we aren't going to do it here because we have too many bleeding hearts.
Yeah, and I mean, the hard part there is you've got Minnesota, Wisconsin, and Michigan all feeling those effects. Three of the most, proficient whitetail deer hunting states, in the country. And like slowly but surely, we talk about loss of access. Like all of those people that used to go north to hunt in those states now are staying south, right? And so obviously it's just consuming more and more territory for where people can hunt.
Well, and branching out too.
I live near the Whitewater Wildlife Management Area, which is the biggest public hunting area in Minnesota, right? And it's a WMA. And, just living there my whole life, I've seen, and I used to work for the DNR back in the day, right out of college. I've seen the influx of pressure put on the public and less focus on managing the public, quite honestly, for whitetails than ever before. So like you were saying just a little while ago, the public becoming kind of a wasteland or just a desert for quality whitetail hunting is so true, because they want the license revenue that it creates, but they don't want to put any work or effort into managing the resource. And quite honestly, I mean, Minnesota, where I live, could hunt. I always said our public area could be the number one public area in the entire world to grow trophy deer. Historically, we did years and years ago, when I was real young in the 70s, they had a manager that managed that public area, and he loved deer. So he created a sanctuary system in that interior part of that public area. And that public area is 37,000 acres in basically in a contiguous chunk. And that sanctuary system over the years was very blueprinted and all those deer, and they would consistently go back, even if they left the sanctuary during the summer months and early fall, they would go back to find sanctuary in that refuge during the hunting season. And then, so the deer got consistently older. There's plenty of ag, and there's great mineral in our region because of limestone and calcium. I mean, because we're along the Mississippi River, and we have limestone, a ton of limestone, which is, in our, it's a rock, and it has a ton of calcium. So that's the key ingredient for big deer is calcium. And you can see that all the way through the Mississippi River, all the way down to the Gulf of Mexico.
Yep.
That anywhere along the Mississippi River system, it's because of calcium that's been deposited all the way throughout the entire flow of that watershed. So our region being so diverse with agriculture, habitat, and, so they have abundance of food, and then the mineral, it can grow big deer, but the key ingredient is they don't get the age. They get killed, and they don't have an opportunity. That sanctuary system created that. Well, then that manager left, in the early 80s, and then another guy come in, didn't care nothing about whitetails, and they still don't to this day, and they just eliminated it. And now it's just open, and people, they don't see big deer anymore because they're just no big deer. They don't have a place to hide.
Yeah.
They just get shot.
Yeah.
And we have a large Asian Hmong population of hunters as well, and they are very proficient. They are very proficient at shooting animals. So
who told us about that recently?
that too is contributed to the lack of mature bucks.
It was Aaron.
Aaron who?
Gaines
was telling us about the Hmong population.
Yeah,
we just heard about this recently.
Oh, really?
Because we like when we hunt Kansas, we run into a lot of Asian guys like
deep in the public.
Yeah, deep public squirrel hunting.
With like a 55-gallon Yeti.
Yeah, it's like 2 miles back in, and he's out there just like plunking fox squirrels.
Like 12:30 in the afternoon. We're like scouting new areas. They're like on the hunt.
Yeah, we have some Asians that are a fan of driven, and they're great guys. They came from Vietnam, or they were hill people that protected us during the Vietnam War, and that's why they got asylum here, and they came over here with nothing, but they were hunters and gatherers, and so and they continue to still do that to this day, and where the areas where they live, which Minneapolis, St. Paul has a huge population of them, and they, of course, they don't own land for the most part, so they go to public areas, and those public areas, and they're great at hunting. I mean, in the old days, they showed up in, tennis shoes and blue jeans or whatever. Now they have great equipment, and they're extremely good hunters. So they get them, one way or another. They clip them. And
are they deer hunting where you're at, Pat?
Deer hunting. Yeah, they hunt everything. They hunt squirrels and deer and fish and everything else. But
They're like the Amish of the upper Midwest.
Yeah.
they good for them. They're citizens. They're working class Americans. But they're just they're that good a hunter that they get the resource that they're after, and they're better than a white guy at it. So
yeah.
It does have an effect on our public areas in the part of the country that I live in, and that's whether you like it or not, that's the truth and reality of it. So we don't have wolves, we have Hmungs down there. So
well, we see the Minnesota guys, like we always call it like the Minnesota contingency. Like we go to Kansas, there's Minnesota guys. We go to Illinois, there's Minnesota
always
guys.
Minnesotans. I'm like, where are these guys freaking coming from?
These boys travel. They're gonna come and they're gonna kill some shit.
Well, that's because Minnesota is just not a great state anymore to kill big deer. You got pockets, but it's few and far between. The north is done because of the wolves, and western Minnesota don't have any habitat for the most part. So you're limited to southeastern Minnesota where I live, and that is getting, more and more reduced from privatization and overhunted public. So the opportunity just aren't there. So they're smart enough to travel to other parts of the country now to hunt deer. Yeah. It's just part of the game. This happened a long time ago in the West. I seen this coming so many years ago. I'm like, people are complaining, well, you can't go out and hunt elk like you used to, and now you got a lease or you got to go with an outfitter. I'm like, hey, and that's what they said about elk. Well, it just finally worked its way to the east, and now it's in the whitetail side, here as much. But I tell them guys, I'm like, look, man, you can bitch about it all day long, but you pay a lot of money to go play golf every day, for a pass to go on the golf course and all them clubs. You got to pay to go hunting. It's just the way it is.
Yeah, and that's I think the hard challenge, and where like the hunting population is really divided now, is there's a bunch of people that realize it and they love hunting and everything about it so much that's their hobby. That's what they do. Then there's another group who like to hunt, but they also like to golf or go see concerts and whatever else. And so their money's spread out, and they don't. And they're the ones that don't have the access like they used to. But it's anything anymore.
It's unfortunate too, because it's not like, it's different from golf in that there's a public resource element of it that like everybody has or at one time had access to. I think still has access to, as long as you can find a place to go. And so it didn't used to take any money to go. Mm-hmm. You just basically had to buy a weapon. You had to be able to afford a weapon and have time off work to be able to go. And that I think has dwindled, right? As obviously, right?
But it costs more money to play golf than it did before. And you certainly got to have a tee time now, which before you just showed up, there wasn't the pressure on golf. Everything increases, right, with pressure, and ultimately it comes down to the bottom dollar. It takes more money to pay to play, so it just caught up in the hunting world. Not that I like it, right. I'm not telling you that I like it at all. Hell, I don't like it, to be honest with you, but it's just it's the way it is. It's the times we live in, and it ain't getting any better. And honestly, this is why I go to Canada and hunt. The reason I like hunting in Canada so much, whether it's for moose, deer, bear, whatever, when I cross that border, I don't have to worry about dealing with outside hunters messing up my hunt. I can go hunt an animal that's been relatively not hunted hardly at all. It's very low pressure. There's just not, there's not a populace of hunters that live in Canada like there is in the United States. Mm. And you gotta hunt with an outfitter, a licensed outfitter, to even hunt legally in Canada. That's the law. That's they don't allow Americans to come up there and just go wherever they want. And that's why Alaska is so overrun with hunters, is because you and I can go hire a flight service, and we could fly anywhere in Alaska and go hunting for most any species except for brown bear and sheep. We can hunt primarily wherever, whenever we want, for moose, for bear, whatever. So caribou, I mean, in that pressure, I don't know how much experience you have, but if you go to Alaska and you're out there in the middle of nowhere and you think you're in the middle of nowhere, it's a constant airflow of airplanes flying around looking for game. And it's just overpressured, over hunted.
Wow.
And so that's when you go to Canada, none of that. And you're one-on-one with the animal. Hunting is hard enough, but you're one-on-one and you're hunting them a lot of time in a wilderness situation. So, I mean, patterning or stuff like that just doesn't exist. I mean, you're kind of back to the old basic way of hunting, right? Getting lucky, spot and stalking, whatever that might be, calling. It becomes a different game there. So that's my gig on Canada. I love hunting there because of just being kind of back to the old way of hunting and being able to chase the animal one-on-one and not have to deal with all the outside influences.
Do you hunt primarily farm ground in Canada, or do you hunt some wilderness type whitetails as well?
So I hunt a lot in Saskatchewan. I do hunt in Alberta for whitetails, but mainly, there's the dividing line. The northern part is the only part that's allowed for Americans. You can't hunt in the southern part, which is more agricultural based. The northern boreal forest up there is where outfitting is allowed for Americans, and that is primarily wilderness. It's primarily large tracts of. No, there is, like where I hunt in by Meadow Lake there, and up towards Pearceland in that northwestern part, there is pockets of agriculture, and if you can get close to that agriculture, the deer populations are stronger versus going north of that into the into solid forest where there's absolutely no agriculture. The deer just completely live on browse. They have no way of eating anything but browse, natural browse. Those deer are different. They're dark chocolate antler deer, generally smaller bodied a little bit. Well, they're big bodied, but they're just a different critter than hunting agricultural based. But you're primarily hunting big woods deer.
And is that?
And I love it, but you hunt. In Saskatchewan you can hunt over bait.
Mm-hmm.
Alberta can't hunt over bait. You have to hunt them differently. You hunt them on scrape lines. You hunt them on cut lines, which is sometimes gas or seismic lines where you just have natural openings where you're catching them traveling. It's just a totally different hunting scenario, than each province offers. But they both have, those deer get old. That's the key ingredient. They get age up there naturally because they live, in the middle of nothing.
So did I hear you right? Saskatchewan is primarily like baiting is the method. That's most, but Alberta does not allow it.
That's right. Yep. 100%.
Interesting.
But I just, again, you're hunting deer with age. I just like hunting them there because it's cold. I've hunted them early season because the season opens up there September 1, and you can hunt them in velvet too. But, if you're hunting, so there's cool opportunity, but again, you're got to go with somebody and pay them to take you, and guide you, or at least have the license to take you.
But that's what keeps that herd, being desirable and having older age structures. Are those regulations that frankly just make it harder for U.S. people to come up and hunt them.
Well, it probably keeps Americans alive.
A low populace of local resident hunters. There's just nobody. There's just not a lot of people that live there, right?
Yeah.
In that part of the world. And, hunting is different. If you go to Canada, it's like turning the clock back 20 years. And that's what the time period you're living in, for the most part. They're just behind. They don't even plant food plots up there yet, really, for the most part. So it's just because it's not a practice, you know, it never has been. So they're just behind our times, so to speak. But it's cool. It's fun. You need to go 100%. You'd like once you go there and experience it and you know, shoot a big chocolate horn heavy deer, you know, that weighs 350 pounds. It's like you pretty much don't even want to hunt, you know, the southern strain of deer.
That's funny, man.
We're working on it. We'll get up there eventually.
No ticks. They don't have ticks up there.
Love that.
That's crazy. But you know, they don't suffer from EHD. They just suffer from severity of winter up there.
Yeah.
You know, and wolves. And those deer, like I think it was 2 years or 3 years ago, I hunted, and since I'd hunted so many consecutive years, you kind of see how a long winter period will affect antler development. And, you know, those deer 3 years ago were short 20 to 40 inches of antler growth from a severe winter the year before, or, you know, the spring before. So, you know, things can really affect it big time, you know, but this year they've had the most mild winter ever. So in theory, this year they should have the best antler development they've had for many, many years. So I'm excited about what this next fall has to offer for going there. So anybody going to Canada, you know, this year's the year.
It's coming.
Crazy, man. Well, cool. Well, Pat, we know you got some shit to get done up there at the farm, and we appreciate you jumping on and you know, talking with us. I mean, we barely scratched the surface on stuff, so we'll have to get you roped back in here once we get towards the season and stuff more.
Let's do that.
As well, man. But no, greatly appreciate you coming on. And so I guess before I let you go, for people wanting to check out Driven, you mentioned YouTube, so you guys are obviously putting some stuff up on there and social.
Yep.
And then still on outdoor.
We're on. You can catch Driven on a lot of different places, but like if you're watching any TV, if you're still an old person and you listen to podcasts, you can go to the Outdoor Channel. That's where we're on every week. 9:30 Eastern, 8:30 Central. Tuesday nights is our anchor slot, and then we're on 5 or 6 other times during the week as well. We're celebrating our 20th season actually this year.
Wow, man!
So
Congrats.
that's pretty cool.
Yeah.
That flew by. But, you know, interestingly enough, I'm so old that we had to make a pivot into the digital world. So, yeah, we're now, you know, fully engaged and uploading semi-live stuff to our YouTube Driven Hunter page. And, you know, so they're getting to see a lot of stuff that's just currently going on. We're posting pretty much almost on a daily basis to YouTube now.
Wow.
Short form, and then long form we're trying to get 1 or 2 every 2 weeks and posted there. So like I said, my bear that I just killed in Saskatchewan is already posted up there and is doing pretty well on views, considering it's kind of a down period right now and how people are watching digital. But then of course we're on Facebook and Instagram and everything else as well. So, you know, people know what we're doing almost on a daily basis. So, and that's the world we live in. It is different in producing television like the old days where it took a year to put the content out.
Yeah, right.
Yeah. It's a crazy world. I got more investment and I make a lot of less. I work twice as hard for the dollars I ever did before. So.
Yeah, that's why every time people say, "Man, it must be awesome working in the hunting industry." No, it doesn't. It's not all awesome.
Oh my God, you need to call me back someday, and we'll sit down and do one just on the business side of it and just media and filming and all this stuff. Because you know, the long and short of it is Driven, and you just mentioned this in the beginning, was built on quality. It always has been. I'm not a strong person. I'm a rather nasally, boring, out of shape Midwesterner that just is not super cool to appeal. I'm not as quick-witted as Michael Waddell, that's for damn sure. And but we built our brand solely on quality of the production for the most part, right? I mean, there's other aspects like family. We include family and Nicole being a female, good-looking female hunter, but it was always cinematic value driven. But once the digital world came and people watch on their TV, on their screens, it kind of, the quality left because they wanted rawness and raw stuff that was not beautifully edited, not beautifully filmed. It was just stuff, how stupid you could act on in front of the lens, or something that got somebody's attention quick, and not a long storyboarded out cinematic film. And it just lost us. We lost our identity and our brand and how we built it. And I'm hoping that eventually it purges itself and quality comes back to the forefront. But it's been an interesting ride, to say the least.
Yeah, man. Yeah, I don't think any of us would have been able to foresee like where that was gonna take its turn, and you know, not even just like 10 years ago. You know, people, you know, when I was managing marketing budgets and stuff, and they'd be like, "Well, yeah, I'm on YouTube," and I'm like, cool, like, what do you want, product? Like, I'm not gonna pay you, you're on a free platform, you know, you're putting out 5-minute episodes, and now you know, look at where things have turned.
Right. And that's what's really changed the business. You know, the TV sponsorships and the dollars that it used to take to produce those were pretty significant. Nowadays, with all, and I'm not faulting any YouTubers, but there's so many people now in the market. It's like a million networks that are all going at the same time, and there's so many, and some of them have really strong followings, you know, and they built that. Some of us TV people are playing catch up and trying to build our own platform. Most of us major brands were handcuffed, right? We weren't allowed in the early days to go out and do that because we don't own the rights to our name and likeness, because the Outdoor Channel owned that, right? And they used that to get people to watch the Outdoor Channel, right? That was the idea. But now we've been allowed to do that, so we're playing catch up. But what's happened is the YouTuber, the digital world, those guys gave everything away, a lot of it for free, and all those views and stuff. Just like, hey man, send me a bow and I'll do a product testimonial, and I got this amount of viewership, and they got it for a song. They didn't have to pay TV sponsorship dollars to do it. So all these manufacturers have gotten this stuff over the, you know, are basically getting it for a bargain deal, which has lessened the amount of way that we can make our money. You know, basically we just got to take on more and work harder. It's an interesting thing, you know, but I just give you a kind of the quick rundown about it.
That'll be a good one to come back and talk about, because I think a lot of people listening to this, whether they're doing stuff themselves and or they're just curious about it and have followed it along, is, you know, it's an interesting side of the story that they don't get to hear, right? Like they, you know, they see content producers and they see guys making videos and stuff, but they don't understand like that's how I put food on the table. That is the way that this family is provided for. And so to hear the business side of that, you know, I know in some cases people feel like it gives them a bad taste in their mouth, but it's the reality. Like, this is, you know, I know you maybe don't like that hunting, the industry is changing hunting and stuff, but it's a business.
Well, right. I mean, there's marketing in every business, right? I mean, I don't care if you're into golf, there's marketing behind that, or whatever. If you're into Tupperware, you know, I mean, there's marketing behind every manufactured product out there. That's how they spread the word. Hunting manufacturers are no different. They want to get their product out there in front of people, and the best way to do that is by, you know, doing it through media sources. So, you know, it is a whole different topic of discussion, but it is how it's the way I've entirely made my whole living from, you know, 35 years ago starting out. And you know, I've transformed from the era before even TV, when it was, VHS videos were on retail shelves to then into TV, now out of TV, and now into, streaming services. So it's, you got to learn to pivot, and that's what we're doing, is trying to pivot with it. And we're still playing in a bit of the old school as well. I mean, we're still doing TV because there's still a hell of a lot of older demographic that watches TV yet, that don't watch on their phones and stuff. They still, so that's still relevant. And those older people have a lot of money to buy big ticket items. And the other aspect to the business is the social media or digital platforms are they're basically, in some respects, not good advertising venues for ammunition and firearms, because they're basically blackballed, or they're shadow banned from being able to promote their products because of the damn world we live in, because some school shooting or something. So it's those companies need to advertise in a different way and not be on banned or platforms that which is crazy, because like, look at YouTube, owned by Google. They could pull the plug on our hunting like nothing, and it's over that fast. Turn it off and we're done. And we put in thousands and thousands of hours and effort and dollars in, and it can be over in an instant if they want to. So it's pretty scary, but hey, you do what you do, that's what we're doing right now.
That's it, man. It's a world we live in. Crazy. Well, cool, dude. Well, we'll let you get to work. Stick around here for a second when we sign off. But yeah, man, we appreciate you coming on and chatting with us.
Man, I appreciate it. We'll do it again. I love it.
Right on. The HUNTR Podcast is brought to you by Sever.
Well, one of the biggest things that we always talk about is what our arrow setups are. And this year we're shooting the Sever broadheads. I think we're both shooting the new 2-inch titanium broadhead. And so, we're huge proponents of expandables. And I know we've had this argument back and forth with people, but we're right and you're wrong. And you just need to accept it. We just want to have a giant wound that pumps out blood. That's the bottom line. We build our arrow setups and shoot bows, to maximize penetration. And we shoot broadheads that are going to give us the best blood trails, the most hemorrhage possible. And so part of those setups is we're also shooting the Easton arrows here coming up pretty soon. So we've shot the Victory in the past, and there's all kind of great arrow shafts on the market, but we're looking for a whole system from broadhead to arrow components to the arrow shaft itself. And the more we look at some of these Easton shafts and the components that go with them, that setup's going to be really deadly for us. Yeah, I'm actually using the Easton traditional axis right now in my traditional setups for both my recurve and my longbow. I've got a 100-grain brass insert on those, and then obviously I'm using a fixed blade broadhead on those specific shafts. Right on. So, but yeah, our goal is always to be shooting the best broadhead that we think is going to be the most lethal for our setups. We've done plenty of research. We believe in the Sever broadheads, and we hope you would check them out at Sever Broadheads as well. And awesome. Yeah, pretty cool. Pat Reeve, everybody. There he is. Yeah. Legend. Yeah, it's what do you say, 20-year anniversary for Driven? That's crazy. It's wild. Long time. Yeah, I can't believe it's been going for that long. They were definitely one of the first top quality productions. I can remember even my dad was like, that Driven show, that's the best. It was. I remember for a few years they got best intro, best production. I mean, the cinematography level on that show was off the charts. Their intro, I remember, was like a legendary intro. Yeah, it was epic. Helicopters and shit before drones. Yeah, it's crazy because I do remember before that, I was probably in high school and stuff, that he was doing like North American whitetail stuff. Yeah. But yeah, well, Pat's killed some giants. Oh my God, sloths. In his own right. I mean, he was running through naming a lot of this top, your Stan Potts, your Miles Kellers. Like, dude, Pat's in there too. One of them. I mean, and he's also killed a lot of species. He's killed a lot of bears. He's killed a lot of moose. Like, I mean, they hunted Alaska and Canada a lot in those shows. So, yeah, man, it'd be fun to get him back on and just industry talk. on that side would be really cool. But I thought he made a great point on the water thing. We've been going back and forth on that a lot, and it's like
that give you some action items.
Yeah, I mean it's no brainer. What are those earth ponds?
Yeah,
look awesome.
They're expensive. That 250 gallon I was looking at is it's like $700 or $800 or something like that.
How about the 80?
I don't know.
Like that would be more manageable in some of those wooded areas.
Well, see, but I'm worried about the size, and even as much as I like the design, and that's exactly what I would have designed. I'm like, I like how it's shallow and it looks good, but it's like I worry about evaporation, and like I'm not going to go fill water holes. I'm just not going to.
Sure,
maybe one or two if I'm like gotta have it, but
well,
I would rather
just seems
have
like
something deeper that can hold more water.
Yeah, I agree. It's also deer use. Like he's right. Those deer go right out in the middle and they feel comfortable. If it's like a deeper circle, I don't think they're gonna just step into.
Well, that's not deep. I mean, I think it's only like
I know. That's what I'm saying. Like,
they're saying they will. It's like that's why I question the Rubbermaid and stuff. I'm like, I don't know. They're not gonna get. And they're like, oh yeah, they'll get right in there.
Yeah, I've not seen that.
And
they're
they're like this deep.
Yeah, I've not seen that.
And like not. You know.
Yeah, I don't know what the best. Like I said, I opened up that natural
That's
one.
what I'm gonna plant.
Which would be,
or that's what I'm gonna
do Rubbermaids.
Well, at least for this round here.
I do like those in that, like, just because I've got my tractor. Like, I don't have a backhoe to dig 3 feet, for a Rubbermaid to set down in there. So, like, having just that shallow to be able to take enough off with the tractor and then lay it flush is nice.
Yeah, I don't know what I'm going to do yet.
$800 is expensive, for sure.
Yeah.
Versus, I mean, what about your, what was your stuff? Yeah, your bent night? How's that looking?
Really good, I think.
Okay.
I haven't been back real recent. I'm curious what it looks like right now with no rain.
Because I would, obviously it would be nice to
problem
provide.
With that is the mud flat.
Oh, from an EHD standpoint. Yeah, I get that.
Which we don't get a lot of.
But I mean, what I don't know is if you do the sodium bentonite, does that prevent the hatching in the mud flat?
I doubt it.
Because it seals it weird, right? There's no oxygen really being able to get down to the larva and stuff.
I don't know, truthfully. I don't know. But I think it just is like an additive to the soil. It's still a mud flat.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, because again, it'd be nice to provide deer water right now.
Well, the reality is, where I'm at, it's cattle country. There's going to be mud no matter what.
And I'm more worried about from, let's say, mid-September to December 1st, having a water source available. So I don't worry necessarily as much about drought because we usually have pretty wet falls. Like, we're in a drought right now. We're about to be. But so if it goes dry, it kind of goes dry. I don't feel as pressured to be providing them water.
Think even like a 250 gallon. It's like if you fill it up once, like even on October 1st,
you're going to get a couple rains, but in November, there's going to be water in there for that deer.
Right.
So I don't know. But I mean, again, I don't think I can necessarily do it on all of my plots, but there's a couple key stands where it's like, man, if I had a nice 250 gallon water hole here,
especially in
awesome.
your dry bedding. Yeah, that's the
absolutely.
That's the ticket.
So yeah, I think that was a big takeaway. I thought the Canada stuff was really cool, and yeah, I mean, like you said, Pat, it was cool that he was running down all those names. It didn't include himself, which is dude's a killer.
Oh yeah,
has killed a ton of deer.
We'll make it to Canada eventually. We've known.
Almost made it.
There's millions of acres of wilderness and ag and stuff. That's like, I mean, it's a long way away. It's not like hey, let's go get that food in real quick. Yeah. It's a dedicated trip and stuff, but. Oh yeah, dude, we're stacked. I'm even truthfully like we're I don't know in the next week or so if we're supposed to find out if we draw Iowa or not.
I think so,
but it's like we have a plan and we've been out once, but it's like we haven't really dug in yet.
Yeah,
we need to figure out a plan for that. On top of like we had 2 tags in Illinois this year, and Ohio. It's like we're looking pretty good from a tag situation here.
Yeah. Oh, it'll just be time. Like always, it'll be
working it out.
This is the day to hunt. We need to be in Illinois, Iowa, Ohio, and Kentucky all today.
Just and go. Yeah. Be 3 places at once.
Yeah. So, but that's the fun part about it, man. It'll be exciting to see what shows up, and yeah, I mean, you just got to keep plugging away. I think water was a big one there to take away and be able to look at here. So
I'm just looking for an excuse to go back to the farm. At this point. So yeah, hey, we need some water holes.
Yeah.
Hey, yeah,
might as well go do some water holes. Cool. Well, we appreciate everybody listening to episode 187 with Pat Reeve of Driven TV, and we'll see y'all next time.
Later.
Take me